या नीरज, गुड मॉर्निंग, वेलकम अगेन। और आज हम बैंकिंग सेक्टर में जो स्ट्राइक चल रही थी पिछले 2 दिनों से उसके बारे में बात करेंगे। तो इससे पहले कि हम आगे बढ़े, मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगा कि आप दर्शकों को ये बता दें कि आपका बैंकिंग एक्सपीरियंस कहाँ कहाँ पे रहा और क्या क्या आपका एक्सपोजर हुआ बैंक्स के बारे में, स्पेशली जो रूरल सेक्टर को भी मेरे ख्याल से आपने काफ़ी हद तक कवर किया है। सो वेलकम एंड इट इज़ योर शो नाउ।
Thank you, Colonel Saab. My banking experience has mainly been in the development sector. I was with NABARD for many years, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. And for 3.5 years, I was with the ICICI Bank as business unit head for development strategy. So that is the direct banking experience. And for some time, briefly, in a different role with Royal Bank of Scotland as vice president there. So this is in brief as far as my banking experience is concerned, but it is spanning over 15 years, and I have been associated with development banking even after that through agricultural projects, livelihood projects, and so on and so forth, and know quite a bit of the scenario there at the ground level.
दैट्स रियली वंडरफुल। अच्छा, अभी ये जो यूनाइटेड फोरम ऑफ बैंक यूनियंस ने जो बैंकिंग लॉज में जो अमेंडमेंट कर रही है गवर्नमेंट, 51% से वो 26% पे अपनी होल्डिंग को लेके आने वाली है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया। तो यूनाइटेड फोरम ऑफ बैंक यूनियंस ने, जो बेसिकली अम्ब्रेला ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है 9 बैंक यूनियंस का, उन्होंने स्ट्राइक की 2 दिन की, और बेसिकली अगेंस्ट द, यू कैन कॉल इट अगेंस्ट प्राइवेटाइजेशन ऑफ गवर्नमेंट बैंक्स। तो इस स्ट्राइक के इशू क्या हैं, वेदर दे आर राइट और रॉन्ग, और शुड वी और गवर्नमेंट फॉर दैट मैटर गो फॉर ए बैलेंस्ड अप्रोच। तो जरा इसके इशूज और सॉल्यूशंस, इन सब के बारे में थोड़ा सा आप दर्शकों को बताएं।
Government is already going with a balanced approach. It is only reducing its equity. It is not leaving out the ownership. In the very first place, the banks before 1969 were private banks, except for State Bank of India, which was nationalized way before from Imperial Bank of India to State Bank of India.
ओके।
Then in 69, Mrs. Gandhi nationalized 14 banks. Again in 1980, 6 more banks were nationalized. A couple of them more again. So government is just going back to where it was, leaving the sector, the banking sector, to develop on its own without the crutches of the taxpayers' money. The banks were nationalized in 1969 with the view that it was thought at that time, and it was supported by figures also, that the banks were not lending to the rural areas, to farmers where it was needed at that point of time. Green revolution had just kicked in at that point of time in 66. Still, one of the major hurdles besides technology in agriculture was availability of finance in the adequate quantity at the right time. Industries were suffering, so government took a stand that we will nationalize 14 banks, and they were nationalized. The working was taken over. To a large extent, the very idea of taking over the banks proved to be right as far as the financing to the sector was concerned.
ओके।
But after some years, it was realized that owning or operating the banks at the government level may not be the right or the best thing to do. The reason is complacency set in as far as the staff was concerned. Customer service suffered. The advances started becoming bad loans or the NPAs. And ultimately, it was the government which had to bail out these banks again and again, pumping in thousands and thousands of crores of rupees at different points of time to keep them afloat and to keep them operational. This is basically a proposition which is not acceptable in in a developed or in an economy which is relying on the market forces. I'm not saying that market forces are always right, but market forces definitely allocate the resources in a much better way than the command economy kind of a thing. That
ओके।
is my view.
ओके नीरज, मैं आपकी बात समझ सकता हूँ, देर इज़ नो डाउट अबाउट दैट। अब 1971 में जब नेशनलाइज हुए थे और अभी आप बेसिकली अपनी इक्विटी कम कर रहे हैं, तो उस टाइम से
69।
और अभी तक आपका जो पॉइंट है बेसिकली कि कॉम्प्लेसेंसी और जिस पर्पज से उनको नेशनलाइज किया गया था, आइदर दैट पर्पज हैज बीन अचीव्ड और प्रॉब्ली इट इज डिफिकल्ट टू अचीव दैट पर्पज. इज दैट सो?
It's not achieving that purpose or not achieving that purpose. It doesn't concern that.
ओके.
It is basically the operational and the governance issues which are of prime importance. If a bank, it's as simple as that in a market economy. If a company doesn't work, if it is not making profit, if it is not giving the returns to its shareholders, to its investors, that company has to die. It has to exit the market. What is the use of the company which doesn't give any return on investment?
ओके.
So that is the reason in banks also, if a bank is not working, it is not profitable, it is not meeting its objectives, let the bank be closed. Why should thousands and thousands of crores of rupees of public, of taxpayers' money be pumped into an inefficient structure?
ओके.
So when we say privatization, it is basically with an aim to make these institutions more responsive and more responsible to the shareholders. Shareholders, as of now, the major shareholder is the government. It has the biggest say. So government is just trying to reduce its share and divesting from 51% to 26%, so that the shareholding can be more broad-based, which will force these institutions to be more responsive and responsible and
ओके.
working.
ओके. अभी जो मैं ट्विटर पे देख रहा हूँ ना, जो बेसिकली जो लोग पॉइंट दे रहे हैं, वो पॉइंट उनका ये है कि अगर इसमें गवर्नमेंट की जो होल्डिंग है, इक्विटी होल्डिंग, वो कम हो जाएगी तो ऑब्वियसली गवर्नमेंट का से भी कम हो जाएगा. उस हालत में जो पुअर फार्मर्स हैं या जो रूरल सेक्टर है, उसको इन्वेस्टमेंट ये बैंक्स नहीं करेंगे. तो इज दैट ट्रू?
That is partially true. That is not completely true.
ओके.
See, suppose, let's keep banks aside. If I, as an investor, want to get returns, will I not invest in those areas or activities from where I can get returns? When the bank nationalization took place, it was from the point of view of a welfare state, irrespective of the profits, because it was thought, let us make these farmers capable and stand on their own feet. And to a large extent, this was achieved, may not be fully, but to a large extent, it was beneficial. Those incongruities, those difficulties continue even today.
ओके.
But when we say privatization or private sector banks will not lend, it may be partially true, and privatization is also not the magic bullet for the economy. It has to be basically a mix of private and public sector. How it comes about, I'll be talking about it.
ओके.
But yes, it will be more responsive. The
Okay.
banks will lend quickly, take a decision on the loan applications quickly, at the right amount, and definitely move forward. If they have to make profit, they have to basically be on the guard, not only lending, but also recovering the money. Non-recovering or complacency at that level has led to NPAs.
Okay.
And that is what these, see, this strike is basically, it's their democratic right. So strike they may, but basically the strike is that they will have to work, that they'll have to put in more hours, they'll have to be more diligent, they cannot be careless, and they cannot be working like overlords. They are working as overlords,
Okay.
as if they own the money. What happens in a public sector bank? You go, and the kind of attitude and the customer service we get is atrocious. So compared to the private sector banks, be it HDFC, be it IDBI, be it ICICI, be it Axis Bank, this is
ओके.
good.
आई गॉट योर पॉइंट. लेकिन एक बात आप बताओ, जनरली जो पॉइंट लोग पुटअप करते हैं कि जब नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स की बात करते हैं तो जो मेन पॉइंट आता है वो आता है कि बड़े बड़े जो कॉरपोरेट हाउसेज हैं और इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट हैं, जो जिनकी बड़ी बड़ी कंपनी हैं, वो लोन लेते हैं, उसके बाद लोन को वापस भी नहीं करते। एग्जाम्पल लोग देते हैं ऑफ कोर्स विजय माल्या का। और rather than getting them accountable and bringing them to justice or probably recovering money from them, loan from them, जो पुअर फार्मर है उसके लोन को अगर वो डिफॉल्ट करता है तो बैंक्स उसके तो पीछे पड़ जाते हैं। और जो बड़े बड़े जो ये डिफॉल्टर्स हैं, इनको बाय डिफॉल्ट और बाय डिजाइन ना गवर्नमेंट छेड़ती है और ना बैंक्स उनको कुछ कह पाते हैं। कितना ट्रू है, कितना फॉल्स है ये स्टेटमेंट?
It is not by default, it is by design only, and it is the design of the social structure.
ओके।
कमजोर को तो सभी दबाएंगे। अब एक फार्मर है, अब विजय माल्या को, एक फार्मर को जाके तहसीलदार उठा के अपनी जीप में बैठा के ले आता है, माल्या को कर लेगा क्या? वो नहीं कर सकता। एंड द वेयर विद ऑल विद पीपल लाइक माल्या और अदर पीपल have in terms of the legal aid, in terms of the approach to the powers that be, they are able to manipulate that,
ओके।
which itself is an ill which has to be corrected. और दूसरा क्या है, विजय माल्या ने दिया सिस्टम को गेम करके, a farmer is not able to gain and see it from the point of view of a banker. अगर बैंक लोन दे रहा है, एक बड़ा लोन उसको देने में अगर उसको लग रहा है कि ठीक है लोन, if you and I are there in deciding position, so I would like to give a loan of 10 crores rather than 1 crore to 10 people, or just 10 lakhs to thousands of people, because seemingly it becomes easy to manage smaller tickets, a smaller number of loans with bigger ticket size. And that is what happens in privatization. And that is where the fear comes that farmers or small loan seekers will be ignored. That is true to an extent. How
ओके।
this is to be taken care of is something we have to put a mechanism within our society and approach towards that as far as farmers are concerned. When we are trying to encourage the farmer producer organizations, the FPOs, let the bank start dealing with the FPOs, let the FPOs be formed, let the bank start dealing with the FPOs. It becomes easier to monitor those loans, because ultimately the FPO acts as a peer pressure group for an individual farmer who is a member of their organization. So the loan to agricultural sector will undergo a change if FPOs start taking the front seat. And it also becomes easy because the ticket size is bigger, easier to monitor, easier to follow.
तो
And banks have, हाँ, yes,
तो
please.
अल्टीमेटली वेयर हैव वी लैंडेड अप? आपने जो फार्म लॉज हैं जो एक्चुअली रिपील हो चुके हैं और जिसमें फार्मर्स प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस की एग्जिस्टेंस होनी थी या उनको डेवलप करना था, अल्टीमेटली ऑल द थिंग्स आर इंटर रिलेटेड। लोन तो फार्मर्स को देने ही पड़ेंगे अगर एग्रीकल्चर को डेवलप करना है, यू मीन टू से। और उसके लिए मैकेनिज्म को इवोल्व करना पड़ेगा कि रिकवरी भी आसान हो। इज दैट योर पॉइंट?
Yes, that is my point. But farm laws and FPOs are not interconnected.
ओके।
Farm laws were basically or would have been catalyst for forming the FPOs.
ओके।
FPOs are being formed whether there are farm laws or there are no farm laws. It doesn't help. It
ओके।
doesn't matter. It would have facilitated the working of the FPOs to a large extent, that they would have been able to sell the produce outside the mandi limits. They would have been able to sell their produce across the borders of their states. That would have definitely helped the FPOs. But even now, even in the absence of the farm laws which were brought about, the FPOs can do a lot as far as aggregation of loan demand, repayments, or bulk lending or bulk repayments are concerned. But this mechanism will have to be given some time, 3 years, 5 years, to mature. It is still in the infancy. It's still in the experimental stage at many of the places. So we'll have to give time. But yes, this is a very credible mechanism which can help to a large extent. There
ओके।
will be difficulties, no doubt. Nothing is perfect. But we can experiment with best of the worst, so to say.
ओके। 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 नाउ टेल मी अबाउट द रोल ऑफ द कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स। उनका पर्पज क्या है एंड हाउ फार दे हैव बीन सक्सेसफुल?
Basically, cooperative banks are there to help the farmers get the credit at right price at the right time, in the right quantity, because they are intimately connected with the farmers in their villages or the panchayats. So it is assumed that they know more about the farmers' needs and know more about the farmers. Okay, sorry, KYC की बात करते हैं ना, know your
हाँ.
customer.
Okay.
But but the structure of the cooperatives has over time become so politicized that it is the local mafia or the local strongmen who control these cooperatives. The
Okay.
cooperatives were इनका एस्टेब्लिशमेंट तो इसीलिए हुआ था कि किसानों की मदद हो जाए,
Okay.
पर ओवर टाइम जो दबंग लोग हैं उस एरिया के, वो लोग कब्जा कर लेते हैं कॉपरेटिव पे, और जो असली किसान है जिसको पैसा मिलना चाहिए उसको मिलता नहीं है. तो कॉपरेटिव, ये आइडियलिज्म है कि कॉपरेटिव हो जाएगा तो सब बड़ी खुशहाल हो जाएंगे एंड ऑल दैट, बट द रियलिटी इज दैट दे हैव बिकम डेंस ऑफ करप्शन. The
Okay.
cooperatives, cooperative banks, and in last few years, if we have seen, right from the large cooperative banks like PMC and all, where corruption and scams have been taking place, even small cooperative banks have failed. They have suffered. So when we talk of FPOs, FPO is a corporate structure with a cooperative kind of working. So the working is like a company, but the operation, when we say, or the gelling or the structure is like a cooperative. That is why we are emphasizing on the FPOs, where governance structure is more corporate based rather than whims and fancies of the cooperatives. So ultimately, it is to be the FPOs. It's my thinking that they will be something of help as far as the production supply demand is concerned, as far as the credit supply demand is concerned.
ओके, आई गुड योर पॉइंट. लेकिन मेरे को एक बार बताओ, जैसे कोऑपरेटिव बैंक का पर्पस था फार्मर्स की हेल्प करना, और अल्टीमेटली जैसे मैं पुणे में और पूरे महाराष्ट्र में देखता हूँ जहाँ पे कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स लाइन लगी पड़ी है, देयर आर लॉट मैनी ऑफ देम, एंड जो लोकल पॉलिटिशियंस हैं वो उनको बेसिकली कंट्रोल करते हैं.
That's what
अब
I said.
या, और अगर कल की डेट में, मैं ये नहीं कहता जो एफ हैं, ऑफ कोर्स मैंने डेयरी का भी सिस्टम देखा है, राजस्थान का देखा है, जो एफ हैं, what is the possibility of FPOs getting into success mode without being politicized or without being dominated by the strong, those political strong people in the area? क्या पॉसिबिलिटी लगती है आपको?
ऐसा है, सोशल स्ट्रक्चर है, तो ये पॉसिबिलिटी तो डिनाई हम कर ही नहीं सकते हैं कि पॉलिटिशियंस या लोकल स्ट्रॉन्गमैन उनका कंट्रोल नहीं लेंगे. बट given the structure of the FPOs and the agencies which are promoting these FPOs, up to now, it has been ensured that the power is more or less decentralized and within the hands of the members who are running the FPOs. No doubt, local influential people will have their say greater than a smaller farmer or a smaller holder, which is a truth. We have to accept it. Be it in India or if this structure exists anywhere in the so-called developed world, even there this will happen. ये तो ह्यूमन नेचर है, इसको तो डिनाई कर ही नहीं सकते. हाँ, ये जरूर है कि चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस से उसको कंट्रोल करा जा सकता है. तो एफपीओ टू अ लार्ज एक्सटेंट वुड बी एबल टू हैंडल थिंग्स. अभी तक तो अजम्पशन है, जब तक कि ऐसा है, nothing is perfect. So we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe some of the FPOs have bigger scams than the cooperative banks. Who knows?
Okay.
But as of now, up to now, the FPOs have been successful as far as formation and their running is concerned.
ओके ओके, थैंक यू. अभी एक पॉइंट नीरज आप थोड़ा क्लेरिफाई करें. Our context point is basically so many big sharks like, Vijay Mallya or Modi, Nirav Modi, all those people who took the loan and then they vanished. अभी जो सिस्टम गवर्नमेंट ने इंट्रोड्यूस किया है, सॉल्वेंसी एक्ट, तो उसमें इज इट पॉसिबल टू मेक दीज बिग शार्क्स मोर अकाउंटेबल एंड they have to return the loans of the banks in case they take it? Is that so?
Yes, definitely so. Loan नहीं लेंगे तो कुड़की हो जाएगी.
Okay.
Basically, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act was needed for a long time. We had liberalized in 1991, so the entry of the private sector was easy. Then the reforms came, and in 2002, we also had the other structures coming in as far as the Company Acts are concerned.
Okay.
This the Competition Commission of India, CCI, was set up in 2002, which was basically to sort of provide level field to the corporates. So a company could enter, a company could compete, a company could work, but a company could not exit if it was not functional or it was running into losses. So this IBC, or India Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, this was brought about so that the companies are able to exit or resolve the things, and this has helped a lot. Banks have been able to recover thousands and thousands of crores of rupees which was stuck. The best example which we see in last few years is of SR Steel, Reliance Communication, Bhushan Steel, where 40,000 crores, 80,000 crores have been recovered. And this is basically been on because of the force of the Insolvency Act or Code Bill, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Bill. Had it not been there, we would have lost these thousands of crores of public money. We means the banks would have lost the money. So at least that process is there. If a company says it is insolvent, it cannot function. So
Okay.
a view is taken by the structure which is put in, a very coherent structure which is time bound. It doesn't take years and years. It has to be within set time limits within the code bill. So that way the things are being resolved quickly, efficiently, and it so happened in the case of SR Steel, when this recovery was being made, suddenly the promoters said, don't take the company from us. We'll be paying 40,000 crores what is due and give the control back to us.
Oh,
So
that's a
that
good
means
news.
so that means they never had the intention to pay in the rightful means, and once they were losing the company, they made certain that the 40,000 crores is paid, but their plea was not accepted. That is the other good thing. Same
Okay,
thing
okay.
happened with same thing happened with Reliance Communication. Same thing happened with Bhushan Steel.
So it
So
is
the
not possible nowadays to get away. Eh? You know, recovery has to be there.
नहीं, रिकवरी हैज टू बी देयर. अब वो गेट अवे करने वाला तो गेट अवे कर ही देगा. विजय माल्या बैठा है, कितना जोर लगा लिया, अभी तक तो
नहीं, वो
फंसा
तो
है.
विजय माल्या के टाइम पे तो ये सब
नहीं, आई एम जस्ट गिविंग एन एग्जांपल. आई एम जस्ट
हाँ,
गिविंग एन एग्जांपल.
या
So crooks will be crooks no matter where they are.
नो
The
दैट्स
only thing is
ओके.
हमें कंट्रोल तो करना पड़ेगा ये इनको. So yes, the extent of losses will be reduced and we'll be able to recover a lot of money.
Okay,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, it means government is on the right lines. Means the process has been established. Procedure is set in. Okay. Last
Definitely.
question. So, okay, you can summarize it, but the point is the way we look at it, this banking law amendment bill 2021 जिसके ऊपर ये स्ट्राइक चल रही है, if you summarize it, it is the step in the right direction, but it is not the perfect step. So you summarize it now.
ऐसा है, परफेक्ट स्टेप तो कोई भी नहीं है. हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन कितनी बार अमेंडमेंट हो चुका. अगर वो इतना ही होता तो हम अमेंड क्यों करते. सो नथिंग इज परफेक्ट. वी हैव टू मूव विद टाइम्स.
Okay.
एंड इवन दिस बिल व्हिच इज बीइंग टॉक्ड अबाउट, ये भी तो बैंकिंग रेगुलेशन एक्ट में चेंज करने के लिए ला रहे हैं, या बाकी जो कुछ कंसर्निंग रिलेटेड लॉज है उसमें चेंज करने के लिए ला रहे हैं, बिकॉज
जी.
वी फील दैट एग्जिस्टिंग लॉज आर नॉट एबल टू मीट द डिमांड्स ऑफ द टाइम. अगर हमें आज, say for example, finance minister had announced in the budget that they will be privatizing or reducing their government stake in two of the banks, right? Indian Overseas Bank and Central Bank of India. This basically amendment bill is to facilitate that kind of reduction in the government's holding within these banks.
Okay.
It should make them efficient. As I said, they'll have to be more responsive and responsible to the shareholders, and that is why these people who have created this kind of a scenario where the PSBs get an image that these people don't work, they basically will have to work now. अब काम करना पड़ेगा, उसके लिए आप स्ट्राइक कर दो. ऐसा है, बिल तो आने हैं, आप स्ट्राइक करो. ये फार्म बिल की तरह नहीं होगा. अगर
ओके।
फार्म बिल की तरह अगर फार्म बिल की तरह सोचते हैं वापस हो जाएगा तो इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट। 2 दिन स्ट्राइक हुई, कितने लोगों ने मिस करा बैंकों को, आप बताओ।
बट
तो
नीरज,
जो सी पॉइंट इज, checks worth 37,000 crores or 40,000 crores was stuck in these 2 days. Yes, that is difficulty. It's a
yes,
setback to the economic process. It is a setback to the settlement process. But ultimately, public at large will start demanding services. अब
yes.
प्राइवेट सेक्टर, आप ये देखें, आप आखिरी बार बैंक कब गए थे, आप मुझे बताएं।
Must have gone about a week back.
वीक बैक। अब कितनी बार गए पिछले 12 महीने में, लीविंग के साइड कोविड, फाइनेंशियल से
Maybe
कितनी बार
six
गए आप
times.
इन 12 months?
Yeah, 6 to 7 times. मैं तो कम ही जाता हूँ, मेरे पास पैसा भी नहीं
सब
होता।
नहीं नहीं, सभी कम जाते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है। क्योंकि आपका बैंक तो ये मोबाइल पे है
आजकल डिजिटल बैंकिंग भी काफी हो रही है।
बस। और नाउ वी हैव स्टार्टेड हैविंग बैंक्स व्हिच एग्जिस्ट ऑन द इंटरनेट ओनली, दे डोंट हैव एनी फिजिकल प्रेजेंस। तब क्या करोगे, तो कर ले स्ट्राइक, कितनी करते हैं। जो स्ट्राइक कर रहे हैं वो इररिलेवेंट हो जाएंगे कुछ दिन में। जब तक है तब तक कर लें काम, नहीं तो
ओके,
इररिलेवेंट होना ही होना है। So
ओके,
this, any amendment which is for the benefit of the economy and the country is welcome. The only thing is there'll always be people who will be against it. We have to see the greater good. That's all. If they have to put it, आप पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक में जाइए, अगर उसको 8 बजे ब्रांच खोलिए, 8 बजे आपको काम करता हुआ मिलेगा बंदा।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
प्राइवेट सेक्टर में, सॉरी नॉट पब्लिक सेक्टर, प्राइवेट सेक्टर में। और पब्लिक सेक्टर में जाइए, अब तो आने लगे हैं, पहले नहीं आते थे। आप 10 बजे जाओ तो पता लगा वो चाय पी रहा बंदा, 10 बजे बैंक पहुंचा और 10:30 10:15 पहुंचे तो चाय पी रहे हैं वहां पे टेलर साहब। तो वो
ओके,
स्थिति तो खत्म हो गई। एंड इफ यू विजिट एनी ऑफ दीज पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स, आप इनके इंटीरियर्स देखो, जो इतने शेडी टाइप के इंटीरियर होते थे, अनलाइटेड, डार्क एंड ऑल, दे स्टार्टेड competing with the public private sector banks
प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स, या
as far as the outlook and customer service is concerned. अभी भी उस लेवल तक नहीं पहुंचे हैं, बट उम्मीद है पहुंच जाएंगे। पर ऐसा है, we cannot deny the advantages we had of the public sector banks, no doubt about it. It was because of them that we could reach millions of farmers or people in the rural areas. ये काम तो हुआ, no doubt.
नो डाउट।
इनएफिशिएंटली हुआ, पूरी अच्छा नहीं हुआ, वो बात अलग है। और वहां पे जो आपने शुरू में क्वेश्चन पूछा था कि ये फियर है कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर वाले पहुंचेंगे नहीं पहुंचेंगे, वो बहुत जेन्युइन फियर है। क्योंकि वो प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी के पीछे जाएंगे, वही मगजमारी नहीं करेंगे। क्योंकि उनको बड़े बड़े लोन देके उनको पकड़ना आसान है, बजाय छोटे छोटे फार्मर्स के पीछे। क्योंकि सी अ फार्मर विल कितना लोन लेता हो, 10,000 रुपए, 20,000 रुपए, बट ओवरऑल प्रोसेस जो किसानों के हैं वो काफी फैसिलिटेट हो गए हैं। किसान क्रेडिट कार्ड आ गया है, ओडी लिमिट सेट हो जाती हैं, इट बिकम्स इजियर। बट स्टिल उतने छोटे लोन प्राइवेट सेक्टर वाले रिलेक्टेंट होंगे हैंडल करने में। हु नोज, दे आल्सो रिफॉर्म। एज वी आर टॉकिंग ऑफ रिफॉर्म इन द पब्लिक सेक्टर
आई
बैंक्स,
एग्री विद यू।
वी आर टॉकिंग ऑफ रिफॉर्म्स इन द प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स आल्सो।
या
सो
आई
लेट्स सी।
थिंक, yeah, I think it will be there. It will take some time. There will be hiccups, there will be problems, but
बट
ultimately
बट
improvement तो आना ही पड़ेगा सिस्टम में, अदरवाइज काम
बट
कैसे चलेगा।
पर ऐसा है, आपने पूछा कि समराइज करने का ये है, रिफॉर्म होने होने और होते रहने चाहिए। अगर रिफॉर्म नहीं होंगे तो इकोनॉमी ग्रो नहीं करेगी। वी हैव टू सी हाउ द इकोनॉमी। अब हम 5 ट्रिलियन और 10 ट्रिलियन की इकोनॉमी की बात कर रहे हैं, और हमारे स्ट्रक्चर्स और लॉज ऐसे हैं जो हमें पीछे खींचे हुए हैं। तो वी हैव टू अनशैकल दोस लॉज, एंड दिस इज वन स्टेप।
Yeah,
आई
I
डोंट
agree with
थिंक
you.
दैट
I agree
why
with you.
should government be in the banking business? It should be a regulator, it should be somebody who shows the direction. But why should it be there at all, as far as these things are concerned?
Yeah. So thank you, Neeraj. It has been a pleasure interacting with you, and I think you highlighted so many good points. So thank you so much.